Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome one of boxing's true nice guys, and I really mean that. It is, of course, returning guest, Mr. Bradley Ray. Brad, welcome back on the show, my friend.
No, thanks for having me back on, mate. Yeah, I always enjoy coming on, so yeah, thanks for having us.
We always enjoy having you, Brad. So we last spoke back in September. It was fight week in Blackpool. I remember you were talking to me about the fight. You weren't too pleased about who you were going to be fighting. Obviously, it was a nice, quick TKO in the second for you that week. Since then, you have boxed Adam Hepple. Tell me about that one, Brad.
Yeah, so it's nice to pick my first title up as a pro. That was for the Commonwealth Silver title, and secured a good third round stoppage against a tough game kid. He's boxed. I think he's boxed for English title. He's won area titles. So they're the types of fights, the little step ups that if I couldn't get in the mix where I was going to be on these big shows, they're the types of fights I wanted. But yeah, got the win, and then was hoping this year we were going to push on to some big things, which it looks like is the case now.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, when we last spoke, you were telling me about, your focus was just kind of keeping busy until the opportunity came. I think an opportunity did come that fell through. You were hoping another one would come in the not too distant future. That is what's happened. You do now have an opportunity February 22nd as part of possibly the best boxing card ever. You've got Bivol Beterbiev, Dubois Parker, Hamza Shiraz boxing for a world title, Virgil Ortiz versus Madrimov, Shakur Stevenson, Zhang against Caballel, Buatsi against Smith. I still felt, though, that something was missing. It wasn't enough to get my pay-per-view money, but when I heard you were on the card, I went and got my wallet.
I'm the cherry on the top, aren't I, mate? If it wasn't the best card before, it definitely is now that I'm on it. No, mate, it's great being on such a massive card, and I've said a few times, I remember when this show was announced, like how excited I was to sit at home and watch this show, all the way through, as I'm sure most boxing fans will do. They'll be sat on the couch from 5 o'clock, and every fight's a belter, and I couldn't wait to sit and watch the show, never mind be involved in it. So it's just an honor to kind of be on the show with such a massive stage with that level of fighters. But that's kind of where I believe I belong and where I can get to. So it's just getting my foot in the door, and it's exciting times.
And Brad, when we last spoke, you were talking about an opportunity, obviously, and I felt at the time that you were probably talking more about like an all domestic clash or something like that. But did you know that this kind of opportunity was just around the corner?
Like you say, I was hoping something was going to come up. Like you said, that I was looking at domestic titles. To be honest, I couldn't have dreamed that I would be on a Rio season card. To be honest, it was such a far cry away from where I've been. Boxing at Winter Gardens, boxing on these small horse shows and stuff like, Kingdom Arena in Saudi on the biggest stage of all is, it's miles away from where I've been, but it's an opportunity I've called out for. It's the kind of opportunity I wanted, and I guess it's down to me now to show that's where I belong.
And I don't necessarily want you to talk numbers, Brad, but in terms of the payday compared to your other paydays in your career, what can you tell us?
Yeah, it's by far the biggest payday I've got as a professional so far, and it's a lot more than I've been making over the last year and a half, rebuilding back on the smaller shows on my ticket deals. So yeah, it's nice to kind of have that reward that, I've stuck by my guns the last 2 years, and, I've been confident that I'd get back to that level where, we're making like a wage that I can live off, really, because, without my sponsorship, that has not really been possible over the last year and a half. But to be honest, mate, I know people say it, and I know, it's not about the money, but honestly, it's always a second thought for me, the money, it usually kind of goes into your account a week or two after you fight, and I'm a bit like, oh, but yeah, that's all right. It's like a bonus after the fight. But yeah, mate, like you say, it's everyone knows you're getting good money over in Saudi, and I'm happy that I'm out there, and I'm getting my share, I guess.
And as for your opponent, Constantino Nanga, undefeated, 12-0, 8 KOs. I can't say I know much about the guy. What can you tell us, Brad?
Yeah, I don't think there's loads out there on him. I've found enough on him. I've watched a few tapes and stuff, and look, the guy's a good fighter. His record speaks for itself. He's got the backing of Lennox Lewis, which you wouldn't have the backing of a fighter like Lennox if you aren't a good fighter, or if you didn't believe that you could do things in the sport. But look, and I know, they'll probably be favouring him. They're probably getting me in as the opponent. But when I look at this on paper, it's a 50-50 fight, and if anything, I'm more tested, and I don't think he's been tested as a pro, and I'm planning on testing him, and we're gonna find out whether he's gonna sink or swim.
And I know that obviously, well, you know full well that if you perform good enough, you'll be back in Saudi. We've seen it happen to other guys boxing on these Saudi undercards. I'm sure you're hoping that this is, in some ways, like a start of a new chapter.
Yeah, for sure. Like, people know me. Like, win, lose or draw. I deliver, I'm entertaining. And I think that's what it's all about. I go for the knockout. I mean, good fights, and that's what I plan on doing on Feb 22nd on a show full of so much talent and with so many great fights. I want to try and steal the show somehow. I want to be the fight that people are talking about, and it's a big ask, and I've got to find some way of doing that.
And I know, again, you talk about those other fights here. I know that you're a big boxing fan as well. What is your personal intriguing or maybe most exciting fight on the card, aside from your own, obviously?
Virgil Ortiz, Madrimov, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it's just a great clash of styles, and I think that fight is only going one way. That it's going to catch fire early on, and it's going to be a great fight. Like, when I was there, I was sat at the press conference on the table, and I got there a little bit. Train was delayed. I got there a little bit late, and I just kind of jumped on the end. Everyone was sat down, and they were going through the list of fighters, and I was going, I forgot he was fighting on the show. I forgot that fight that's a great fight, and it just got me even more excited. I think the Zhang Kaya belt, Caballero, is it Caballero?
Caballero, yeah.
I think that's a great fight as well. I think it's that's another one that'll be entertaining, and I think it's gonna be like I say, when the show got announced, I couldn't wait to watch it, and it's just an honour that I'm kind of going to be part of the show, and hopefully Turkey will put me on first, open the show with a bang, get the win, and then I can go and get a good seat somewhere and enjoy the rest of the show.
Yeah, that's the plan. I knew you were going to come out with like an obscure fight. Not that Virgil Ortiz Madrimov's an obscure fight as such. They're all big fights, but I knew you were going to come with one that didn't jump out. I really like Zhang and Caballero as well. I think that's really interesting. Who have you got in the main event then? I've got to ask you that, this rematch.
It's a tough one. I'm such a big fan of both of them. I'm going to go, I think, in similar fashion as well. I think Beterbiev will get the job done again. I think maybe we might see him put his foot on the gas a few rounds earlier, and I think maybe that could result in Bivol fading a little bit earlier. And I think it could be similar scorecards, maybe a little bit wider for Beterbiev, or potentially maybe get a late stoppage. I just think he's impossible to keep off for the 12 rounds. Like, he's gonna wear you down, and he's gonna get to you eventually. And I know he didn't stop Bivol last time, but the last few rounds it was basically survival. Like, he was just trying to stay away from him. And a fighter like Beterbiev, you can't stay away from him. He's so good at pressure, walking you down, cutting the ring off. And I think he might look at maybe doing that a little bit earlier. And then I just think he'll get to him a little bit earlier. And I think Bivol will slow a little bit earlier, and he'll win a few more rounds.
Yeah, I was one of the few people that actually felt Beterbiev nicked the first one, to be honest with you.
I had Beterbiev, I think maybe 1 round, 2 rounds, like close.
Yeah.
But I had him winning.
Yeah. And again, we haven't even mentioned 2 other fights that I actually wanted to ask your opinion on. Those fights being Buatsi against Smith and Dubois against Parker. Another couple of fights there that for me are so hard to pick. What's your views on them quickly before we wrap it up?
I think when it got announced, I swayed to Parker for the Dubois fight, and I've been watching a little bit of the build up, and I don't know if he is maybe slightly overlooking Parker, and I think if he is, I think that's a big mistake. I think the run of form Parker's on at the moment, I think his team up with Andy Lee has been great for him, and I think if Dubois is overlooking him, I don't think he's going to walk through Parker, like he might think in his head. I think he could come unstuck. I really do. So I think I might favour Parker for that. And the Buatsi Callum Smith fight is another great one. I think I'm a massive Callum Smith fan. I always have been since I was a young kid in the amateurs, and I can see Smith hurting Buatsi. I think we might see Buatsi in trouble like we've never seen him before as a pro. I think we might see him on the deck, or we might see him hurt or wobbled, and how much of a good finisher Callum Smith is. If he does have you hurt, he's usually getting you out of there, but it's a tough one to call that. I might have to sit on the fence with that one. But I do think we could see Smith, test Buatsi like you've not seen him tested as a pro.
Yeah, I think we'd all love to see that, just to see what kind of answers Buatsi comes up with. I love your prediction there. I think that it's a shame that some people I'm seeing are really sleeping on Smith. They're looking at his performances against Canelo and Beterbiev and somehow writing him off against, Buatsi, who for me isn't near that level just yet. But yeah, some great fights. I mean, we can talk about them all day long. Just before we let you go, Brad, I just wanted to give you a chance just to close out the interview. If you want to say anything before we let you go, if I've forgotten to ask you something, whatever you want to say it, my friend.
No, I just want to say a big thank you to everyone for the support, especially over the past year and a half when, I've not been on these big TV shows. I've not been, getting the exposure that kind of I want or, I feel like I deserve. And, I've still had loads of support from people, and whether it's buying tickets, tuning in to the fights or whatever, means the world to me. And, I knew that I'd work hard and I'd get back to this position that I'm in. So thanks for the support, thanks to all my sponsors for the support over the past year and a half. And, hopefully everyone's back on the bandwagon now and, we're going to the top. We've got 20 odd people flying out to Saudi, I think, to come and watch us. So yeah, we anywhere we're going, people are coming to watch. So, it means the world to me.
Oh, that's amazing, mate. That's brilliant. Listen, Brad, as always, the pleasure's mine. Thanks for your time. I appreciate you squeezing me in today, and we'll speak again after the fight, I'm sure.
Top man, thank you. Speak to you soon.